Hello, everyone. My name is Melody Leonard, and I am here with Kelechi Oliver. Hi, Kelechi. How's it been? Okay, I think you're muted. That's very awesome.
Oh,
I think you're muted. So,
sorry, I'm muted. I I was muted. So what's up, Melody? What's up?
awesome. All right. So welcome back to Code Jam. It's a very awesome one. Like I have been all about this Code Jam all week, so I am very excited. I hope you're excited as well. So, uh, Kelechi, you want to take a lead here?
Yeah. So as always, we start with something calm. So first of all, what we do is we give our markers. Markers are like things, the new things you learned during the week, or something you saw that you've not been using. It could be anything. So I would start mine, then Melody over to you. Give your marker, then before we dive right into what we have to discuss today. Is that cool?
All right. Awesome. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so my marker is on something I use Git a lot, like every day, but you know that I've not been able to use like close to 30% of the commands in Git. Right. So I came across this Git command, Git bisect, and I was surprised that something like that exists. Like if you want to like there are two commands like git bisect and also partial staging. So bisect is actually used to like if you want to like figure out bugs, you could use it uses the binary search algorithm to like enables you figure out bugs in your code by going through commits in a kind of in a different way. So maybe you guys can just check it out. Also, partial staging. I didn't know that something like that existed. So like you can actually stage particular sections of a file. Let's say you're working in a particular file, you want to stage just but you make several changes to that file and you just want to stage a particular portion of that file, then you can use git partial staging. So that's done with the normal git add command, but this time you add the dash p flag. Yeah, so those are my markers. Melody, over to you.
That's very awesome. I think I kind of encountered the bisects, but I never got a chance to check it out. And now you've spoken about it, I'll definitely check it out. So my
Yeah.
marker is around the Rust language, Rust programming language. I've been very, very crazy about Rust. So Rust is a very fast language. It's typed, and it's a very safe language. So it allows you to write memory safe code. It doesn't use the garbage collection, and that makes it really really fast. And so what happens with the garbage collector is when your code wants to, or the programming language wants to have your collect all the garbages and stuff like that to clear up memory. It pauses the execution of code, and that way you see your code is not as fast as it should be. But Rust kind of obliterates that and uses something called ownership. So that's very awesome. And apart from that, Rust generally allows you to write safe code and fast code. So I've been looking at the Rust and how I can use it to handle crazy things. Because Rust doesn't want issues, right? Concurrency. I think currently concurrency is turned off by default in Rust, so you have to opt into it, and it's kind of tagged a kind of safe unsafe code, because what happens with concurrency is when you're handling a code by concurrency, you there's a data race, right? Where uh, you know generally you could have a kind of portion of code trying to access a, a data in memory and have ownership of it. And since it's happening almost instantaneously, which is the idea of concurrency, so there's that data race. But Rust kind of uses unique techniques to avoid data race and all that other things. So definitely check it out. It's definitely worth it. So yeah, that is my marker, and I'm very excited about learning more of Rust.
Well, cool. I had the opportunity to play around with Rust. I was working for, I did some 3 months program with MLH. So I worked with Solana Labs and Solana Pay specifically. So I did some thing with Rust. And I think the benefit of Rust is you catch bugs at compile time instead of runtime because of it's highly typed, and also the fact that because it's typed, you can avoid issues such as memory leaks and all that. So I think it's actually a cool language, but because of what I'm doing, because I'm so much interested in the cloud, I decided to learn more of Go than learning Rust. Well, it still works. These languages, they all have their use cases and all that. Once you know how to use them, they will you. Okay,
Yeah,
so
generally.
cool.
Yeah, I feel programming languages are just tools, right? You as a software engineer, you just use whatever tools work and get the job done. So, Rust, Go, whichever works. I think you're a bit laggy. I don't know if you're noticing it, but you're a bit laggy, Kelechi.
Okay, cool. So, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you now, but I think uh, your your connection is a bit laggy.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, what I usually do
Can
is
you hear me
spin up
now?
a ping. Yeah, sure. What I usually do is spin up a ping, a Google ping, like ping 8.8.8, and have it running. So I kind of monitor my internet state at all time. You could try it.
Oh, okay. Okay, cool,
Yeah,
cool. That works. I'll just give that a shot. So, I believe you can hear me properly now.
yeah, sure, I can.
Okay, so we're ready to dive right in, right?
Yeah, we are.
Yeah. So today we're going to be sharing with you, or going to be discussing majorly on enterprise ready backend with NestJs, right? So code jam we're always free to share with you like what we've had our experiences where, like, this whole thing, we're not doing it scripted, so we're able to like really give you everything we know and all that, right? So today is about, like, we're going to be talking about how we can build enterprise ready backends with NestJs. So mostly I believe everyone here has some experience with Node.js. Maybe you've worked with Node.js or heard about Node.js before. Node.js is a backend framework for JavaScript. So if you want to build server-side applications with JavaScript, Node.js got your back. So, and today we'll be focusing on why you should, instead of just using vanilla Node.js or just using Node.js, why you should consider using Nest.js, right? So after we're done with the slides, we'll then go into a demo section. I think at that point, Melody will take over the stream and then give us a demo on how he's working with Nest.js. So, what is Nest.js, right? So, as we all know, you might have heard Nest.js is a framework, mostly for building efficient, maintainable, and scalable Node.js server-side applications, right? Efficient meaning that because of the way the Node.js as a framework is structured, it makes you build application in a way where they're memory efficient, the codes are highly reusable, and then they're also maintainable because when codes, depending on how you structure your application, if your application has good structure, then it's maintainable because each class or each module is having a given function or is doing a particular thing, right? And then scalable in the sense that at a point in time, let's say you're building for a business that started as a startup, and then this business has grown to having so many users, then you can easily scale. That is, you can easily split up your services into maybe microservices, or you can easily add more functionalities. Like if you're going to be using sockets, or you're going to be using whatever thing, right? So Next.js is already powered with those functionalities out of the box, right? Those features, those support for you. So instead of trying to hard code all these things with Node.js directly, with Next.js as a framework, you have all that covered, right? So Next.js uses progressive TypeScript. That is, it adopts all the good whatever updates made to TypeScript, right? So latest JavaScript features, JavaScript, TypeScript, they are just JavaScript. TypeScript is a superset of JavaScript. So when we say TypeScript, it's just like, okay, adding types to JavaScript, right? So NestJS, as you all know, also have very good support for TypeScript. So in fact, since I've been using NestJS, I've never used JavaScript with it because I feel like with TypeScript, I get IntelliSense, I get several other types functionality. My code, I can debug issues at compile time rather than runtime, right? So, and the next thing, Next.js uses object-oriented programming. In Next.js, you get to see yourself creating classes a lot. When you're creating a service, when you're creating a controller, those are classes. Then also it considers functional programming. So you can also use functional programming that is having different functions performing a particular action. Let's say you have a utility class, you've got functions inside or performing different functions. So the next thing is also it considers reactive programming with the use of RxJS. So when you have object-oriented programming, functional programming, and reactive programming, then I think you have everything covered. Because if you want to stick with classes, NestJS got your back. You want to do functional programming or reactive programming, right? So as we all know, if you've been building backend application with Node.js, you've either been using either Koa or Express or Fastify. Those are unopinionated frameworks. Like Express is unopinionated. It doesn't decide how you should create your files, right? You decide how you want to create your files, and then you then just install NestJS as a library, and then wire your controllers and then your handlers and all that, right? So under the hood, NestJS makes use of Express, so you still get the kind of feeling you have when you're working with Express. By default, Express is there, and also Fastify. So you can optionally choose to use to run NestJS. That is the HTTP part of it, the HTTP library with Fastify, or you use Express. Right. For me, I've been working with Express, so I by default I just use Express. So these are just like a bird eye view of all what Next.js is all about. Is a server-side framework for building efficient and maintainable, scalable Node.js application. It's got JavaScript. It includes object-oriented programming, functional programming, and reactive programming, and also it has support for Express, or uses Express under the hood, and optionally you can go in to use Fastify. So after talking about what Next.js is all about, now the main question is why. Before I use a framework, before I use a library, after knowing what that library does, I would ask myself one question. Okay, I already have an existing library I'm using. Why should I go for this new one, right? Why should I switch from this to this? All these are all frameworks. The only reason we want to switch is because maybe it brings some benefits, some performance benefits, some development benefits, right? So why should you consider using Next.js? And that's actually what we're going to spend most of the time discussing. So one of the main benefits and one of the things I like about Next.js is its modular architecture. I've worked in several Node.js projects, and onboarding on those projects are actually a bit painful because when you go on those projects, depending on the person, the first person who worked on that project, they might set the folder structure in a different way. You might get confused. I've worked on projects where all the controllers are added in one folder. So if I want a controller, I go to the controller folder, right? I've worked on projects where the controllers are grouped, all right, depending on the domain, right? So for those projects, I'll have to like onboard on them. I have to learn how they wire things. I have to go through that Express. Express has to do with middleware, so you keep adding middlewares, and routes. I have to go through that chain of middleware, trying to understand, from this endpoint, which controller is executed. Is there a controller executed, or there's a middleware in between? Right? But with something like Next.js, you get this modular architecture where everything is structured into modules and services are decoupled from each other, right? So as this on the slide, Next.js encourages a modular architecture which helps to break down complex applications into smaller parts and more manageable parts, which in future can evolve into microservices. Now, most times when you work on MVP products, or you work for startups, they have they're not as big. They are not big companies, but they have different, let's say, different functionalities. You break down those functionalities into different requirements. You break them into domains, right? in your code, you can instrument it in a way where each domain solves a particular problem. Let's say you're building an inventory system, sorry, a shopping cart system. You organize payment into a particular module. You organize authentication into a particular module. This way, your code is decoupled. If someone is working on, let's say I'm just working on authentication, I don't have to start picking around going through the entire code to understand how things work. I just go inside the authentication folder and I would see all the services involved, all the controller methods, and all the sub-routes inside the domain authentication. Right? So that's that we're getting that out of the box from NestJs because of its modular architecture, and that's powered by something called dependency injection, where we talk about that later on. So adding to that, this makes it easy to maintain, test, and scale the application. NestJs uses modules to organize code into logical units, with each module containing its own controller, services, and providers. So as I stated earlier, in a particular module, you have things like your controllers, your services. Your controllers are what, let's say you're building a REST API where you define your endpoints, like slash this should handle this and all that. Then your services, where you define your business logic, right? So and providers could also be a service, maybe injected from a different um, module, right? So this approach provides a clear separation of concerns and promotes code reuse, since modules can be injected and services reused. So because of the modular pattern, the modular architecture, when I have authentication module, I can, let's say authentication module implements some kind of method. I can reuse this method easily in a different module. I can inject it inside a different module and reuse it. Right. So my code is decoupled at the same time highly reusable. We want to write codes that are highly reusable. When codes are highly reusable, then it's easily maintainable, because when you change something here, it automatically changes everywhere. You don't have to start going through to each controller to change it. So let's say you made an update to your authentication flow. You just change it inside authentication module, and whatever other module uses relying on that authentication module gets updated automatically, right? So that's the benefit of NestJS modular architecture. So the next thing we'll be looking at, okay, this is a diagram showing you a typical example representation of how a NestJS application is structured. So at the top here, at the top level here, you have the server, right? Down you have the main app module, right? The app module, inside you import all other modules. Like here, we're having a booking application. We have the main booking module, we have the payment module, and we have the auth module. And in each module, you have those controllers, those services, and providers. And each of these modules can talk to each other through dependency injection. So I can inject a dependency inside here to invoke some function or some method. Since in this module, we all use classes, right? I can invoke some method inside here to perform some action. So I don't need to redeclare or recreate that function again, right? So some of you will argue with me, okay, that with normal Node.js, I can have classes and I can import those classes. But now dependency injection comes with the benefit. It's memory efficient because of the way those classes are being injected. They are not always instantiated, right? So the instantiation is done always at compile time and then injected, or it's done always once and then injected to wherever it's needed. So that's the benefit. That memory benefit is so important, right? So next, we'll move on to talk about this dependency injection, which is what I just explained. So Nest has built-in support for dependency injection, which is a powerful techniques for managing dependencies between different parts of the application. So um, dependencies could happen in a way where the payment module relies on the integration module. There might be another module, maybe integration module, that has integration with payment gateways like Stripe, like Paystack, and all that. So you can have that payment module depend on another module, which is the payments gateways, or you have payments module depend on another module, which is maybe authentication and all that. So that's made possible with the use of dependency injection, right? So with dependency injection, dependencies are injected into classes and functions rather than being hard coded. This makes the code more flexible, reusable, and testable, right? So you can see that those points are highlighted in bold, which is flexible, number one, reusable, and testable. So I've had instances where with normal Node.js, I'll have a class, and testing that class is so difficult because those classes, maybe in those class, I had a method where I'm calling maybe making an API call and all that. So for me to test that class, I would have to start mocking them in a way. I'll have to like mock those imports and all that. It's a bit difficult, but with Next.js, you can test those classes by just injecting whatever dependencies they rely on. It doesn't care about the import. What it cares about is making sure that that dependency is injected. So with Nest Test Runner, you can inject those dependencies and properly test your class in isolation. So I don't need for me to text cat service class. I don't need to have whatever module is relying or whatever module is being injected. I just make sure that I inject that module while I'm doing my test. So I don't need to actually rely on the actual implementation of what was injected. At test time, I can declare what should be injected. So that's one of the benefits of dependency injection. It makes your code testable. Okay, so below here you can see that, and also Next.js is heavily inspired by Angular. For those guys who do Angular, when you come to the world of Next.js, it will be fairly easy because most of the things, the way you declare a module is almost the way you do it in Angular. So the creator, his name is Camille. Surname, I'm not. His surname, I'm unable to pronounce it. I'm not Polish enough, but yeah, Camille is the creator of Nest.js, and Nest.js is heavily inspired by Angular. So below you can see an example of a cat class, right? You can see that there is a decorator there, the as injectable decorator. This decorator tells Nest.js that this class requires some dependencies injected to it at compile time. So you can see that there is a constructor there at runtime. You can see that there is a constructor there, and you can see that there is that at inject decorator injecting a particular dependency, which is the cat model. Right, so there are different ways to inject dependencies. Here we're using the at inject decorator, but sometimes you can just use the private and then the name of the class automatically. Next.js uses what they call TypeScript metadata and reflection API to actually identify how to do the dependency injection. Okay, and so also, which is very important, Node.js has support for TypeScript. If you're building any Node.js powered application, please try and use TypeScript. It helps not just you, but it helps the company because when it reduces the amount of errors because of those types. Please, if you're using TypeScript, don't do any add any everywhere. I know you want to do that on your side project, but for a company-based project, understand the fact that they're paying you to do this job and try to deliver the best thing you can, both for you and for the engineer who is going to come on board later on. Because when you have type declaration everywhere, the possibility of them running into issues is reduced. And for back-end application, it's okay to have more code because you're not running anything through the wire, right? So it's not like React, which is a front end application that all the JavaScript needs to be bundled and sent to the front end. But with backend application, so you're not bundling any code and sending to the front end. Rather, the backend is busy building, responding to API requests, maybe in JSON, in JSON with REST, or in JSON with GraphQL, or in gRPC, depending on what API you're using, what kind of API you're using. So try and use TypeScript. So Next.js has built-in support for TypeScript. With TypeScript, you get the benefit of good code organization. You get good code organization. You get maintainability is important also. Your code are easily maintained, and then increase productivity. So with TypeScript, you get increased productivity because you get type intelligence. Once you import a class and you're using the wrong object from that class, once you hit a dot, you see that, oh, TypeScript tell you, look, this object does not have this property, or this class does not have this method. Those things are really important, right? And you get this error at compile time, not at runtime when your users are busy. They are calling you, Melody, what's up? I can't log in. Okay, so Nest.js has TypeScript, strong TypeScript support. And so next we'll be looking at, because we're trying to catch up with time, we're looking at some common techniques used in Nest.js. I think these are the things I love the most. The fact that I get these things out of the box, right? So Nest.js provides a wide range of techniques that makes it easy to develop scalable and maintainable web applications. Scalable, maintainable. That's the main thing we're focusing here. Enterprise applications are scalable and they're also maintainable. It's not like your side project, right? Because you're not just the only one working on it. There are several other persons working on it, and business requirements changes. So you need to change is easily adapt to change, and also you need to scale based on number of active users. Your boss will be like, oh, this stuff needs to we need to scale to multiple servers. We need to run our application distributed, or we need to run into microservices. So you need to be able to adapt to that change. And also, let's say you want to handle concurrent sections and all that, you need to write your code in a way that you can adapt to those changes. So those things, these are common techniques that helps you with guards, things like guards, pipe, interceptors, middlewares, exception filters, and custom decorators. So I'll just explain them a bit. With guards, guards are mostly used for authentication, authorization thing. So guards implement a particular interface, which is the can activate interface, which instructs whatever request is coming to a particular route handler. Maybe a request is coming to slash profile, you can add a guard there, like a decorator that says, oh, should this person or this request be permitted to access this endpoint? So guards are used normally when you're implementing authentication or authorization. The next thing is pipes. Pipes are majorly used to transform, right? Transform and validate inputs, right? And then the next thing is middlewares. As we all know, if you've worked with Express, you encounter middlewares a lot. You're always adding middlewares and calling the next function and all that to execute the next handler and all that. So with Nest.js, you also have the functionality of middlewares built in. So you can just call or implement or add middlewares to your application easily. And also, very importantly, we've got custom decorators. You can have your own custom decorators, just like guards is the decorator that does something that implements the can activate interface. To make your app more reusable and more reusable and maintainable, you can create custom decorators for a particular thing. Maybe something your app requires, a lot, many parts of your app requires, you can have custom decorators for them. And the next thing, interceptors. Interceptors are like, they just intercept, as the name implies, intercept HTTP requests and maybe act on it depending on your business logic. So I've used interceptors mostly to implement things like keeping timestamps of requests. I want to know how long it took for this user to get a response. All right, I want to log that in our metrics. Now, I want to take a metrics of that, how long it takes for a user's request to go and how long it takes to respond, how long our server took to respond. So to implement that, I can use interceptors to intercept the request and then attach a timestamp to it and all that. Okay, another thing is exception filter. Exception filters are used majorly to like catch exceptions and then handle exceptions, right? So by default, Nest.js has already built in global exception filter. So in case you need to add an exception filter to your app based on a particular exception, you want to log it to CloudWatch or you want to log it to whatever login agent you have, you want to log it using Wisting or something like that. So Nest.js has support for that. So next, specific techniques. This is also helpful. Whenever I'm asked to implement something in Next.js, I go to Next.js documentation and I look at, oh, what are the techniques? How can I do it the Next.js way? And their ways are always super good, right? So Next.js provides specific techniques for database. Next.js has support for SQL, right? So that's SQL databases. You can use ORMs like Micro ORM, SQLize, Next, Type ORM, Prisma. So with Next.js, I've had the experience working with Type ORM a lot, as well as Prisma. It works super cool, right? So also it has support for NoSQL, which is using Mongo. So with Mongo, you use a library Mongoose. So for those guys who like document-based database, so you have Next.js also has support for that. So Outside database, NestJS has support for WebSockets. WebSockets, depending on the implementation you want, you might want the native WebSocket implementation, or you might want the Socket IO implementation. NestJS has support for GraphQL, file upload, how you handle file upload. NestJS has support for that, for validation, for events, for cookie management, for caching. You want to use Redis or Memcache, NestJS has that. For queues, you want to implement queues using maybe Redis as a queue storage engine. Maybe you want to do distributed queuing, right? You can use NestJS has support for that. So you can use things like Bull MQ or Bull, right? So those are queuing libraries built on top of Redis, right? So I've worked with queues a lot with BoolMQ specifically. Node.js has support for versioning, streaming of files, compression, cookies, logging, and all that. So you see, Node.js got you all covered. So whatever you want to do, whatever you want to build, Node.js is there for you. So I'm done with the quick explanation of what the things you get out of the box with Nest.js. The next thing now is I'm handing it over to Melody. Melody would be discussing or showing us how to do these things. We'll be building a food recipe API. I think everybody eats food, so you want to see a recipe API definitely. So Melody, over to you.
All right. That was very nice, Kelechi, and a beautiful presentation. Uh, Please feel free to leave your questions down the comment section. So if you have any great question, please leave it in the comment section. Uh, so this is more of a demo into you what or how you can handle or how Nest.js looks on the code side. So some of us who have not used Nest.js and are very super excited on, well, we want to use Nest.js. This is more of a this is how Nest.js looks, and this is how you could just do a basic CRUD operation on Nest.js. So Nest.js is a framework, so it's not a library. It's a framework, and it gives you this structure as explained by Kelechi. To have Nest.js running in your computer, you need the Nest.js CLI, which allows you to handle or call Nest from your command line interface. So if you head over to Nest.js documentation, you would see that you need to install the CLI globally. Go ahead and do that. I think I already have it installed, so you can go ahead and do that. Now, the next thing is you definitely want to create a project. Well, to create a project so you can start, your Nest.js thingy. So you can go ahead and call Nest new the project name, and Nest.js will go ahead and prompt a lot of things for you and create that for you. So I have this thing running, and I'll need to open a different instance of a terminal. So if you run Nest new, let's say I say, you know what? Let me see the out of this. Yeah, run Nest new. Let's say Mango. Nest.js will go ahead and ask me a lot of questions like, do I want to use npm or yarn? Normally, I love yarn, right? You can choose that, and if you go, Nest.js will go ahead and install that for you and all those things. Frankly, I did not want to battle with Nest.js and all the complexity of handling internet issue and service providers messing me up because they do a lot. So I went ahead to create that. So I went ahead to create a food recipe file or food recipe project, and I will now go ahead and start that in my VS Code. You can use any code editor of your choice. I love VS Code a lot. I've been using VS Code for mostly Visual Studio and Visual Studio, makes for as long as time exists. So I use VS Code all my life. You can use Atom, you can use Sublime, or whatever works for you. So I'll close all this, and so we'll have a clean file. Now, this is to explain everything Kelechi has spoken about from the code perspective. Here I have done a few configurations, and I think if you want to follow along with these projects, please, you can go ahead and pull this. So if you go to GitHub, I don't know, I don't know if I have GitHub here. GitHub.com slash Melody Leonard slash food dash recipe. I think that should take us to a valid link. Awesome. So you can go ahead and pull this or clone it, you know, pull it to your local computer or something, and you can follow me up and see this exact code in your local computer. And the way you do that, by the way, is you can say git clone. I believe this is just me explaining to basic newbies who are, probably not used to Git. So you can say git clone, and you go ahead and type the URL you copy from there, and that should clone that for you. So I have this basic setup here, and if you run Nest new and generate Nest.js projects, you're going to see exactly the same thing. I think apart from this, would you see this? I doubt you see this. So this is because I'm using a. Okay, I think yeah, you will see this because this is running TypeScript, and NestJS has to transform or read the TypeScript and all that stuff. So here I have my env. An env is where you write your environment variables, right? I just have my port here because we want to keep to standard. We want to use organization standard, right? So I have my env configurations, and this is where it lives. And here we have ESLint. These are basic ESLint configurations, and this help you for linting your projects and giving you all those rules and stuff like that. So if I do something wrong in my code, it's going to underline it to a REST squiggle and stuff like that. Git ignore is the things you don't want to track in your Git, so you're going to ignore them in your Git. For instance, the node modules. There was this once I pushed a node modules project to GitHub and I regretted it. So I am going to tell you this now. Uh, it's definitely not worth it. So ignore the as much as things you don't want to push out live. Probably, for instance, definitely your env should be ignored, and I did not ignore that. Well, that doesn't matter here, but you want to ignore your env files and all those things, and of course your node modules. And this is generated when you run your project, like when you compile your project. So you need to ignore it because every time you run your project, you want to generate new one, so you want to keep up to date. Pretty ROC is basically your lint, your formatting, file formatting. So we have file formatting, and you can activate Pretty ROC. This is not a project for that,
Sorry,
so I will not be talking about. Yeah,
hello. Can you maximize your screen a bit so you can zoom in and we can see properly?
yes, please.
Yeah, extend your screen
I
and then zoom in.
I'm sorry about
Yeah,
that.
then
How
zoom
about
in.
now?
Yeah, perfect.
Awesome.
Yeah, it
So
looks okay now. Okay. Yep.
great. So this is basically your file configurations, or sorry, your formatting. So you want to have, if you want to have trailing comma, if you want to have single quotes over double quotes, this is where you write that. And you have to set in your settings. You have to configure that you want to use. If there is a pretty ROC file, you want to go ahead and use that. And here we have Docker Compose. So this is not a Docker talk, but I'll just peruse through this, right? So I'm using Docker because I didn't want to run MongoDB in my, my computer. I don't want MongoDB in my computer. And I just didn't want to handle the complexity of having MongoDB and stuff like that. So the way I'm doing it is I'm running Docker. So Docker allows you to containerize applications. So you can have things put in this container, and when you have every setup out there, your application is guaranteed to run. So for your most organizational for your most enterprise softwares, you want to use Docker. If you're not using Docker, probably you're doing it wrong. So you want to Dockerize your applications. That way, when you push your projects, you're guaranteed to have the same configurations on any platform. So you could deploy your instance to DigitalOcean today, and you don't have to start configuring. Like, let's say you don't have to install MongoDB, you don't have to do some file configurations or shell configurations and stuff like that, or system configurations. All you have to do is you If you have Docker Compose, you just run Docker Compose up and everything is running for you. So this is the Docker file. This is where we define everything about how we want to handle our Docker. So this is basically when you say from, this implies that you want to build this from the node and you're specifying this app line because it's a bit more lighter than the regular entire node. And your regular Docker, you want to work DR in your Docker, so you want to specify that to be your app. This is optional. You could write whatever you want to write. I want to copy my package.json because then I want to build off my package.json, right? So your package.json is where you have your tracking, your dependency tracking. So you want to track everything there. So I'm specifying that I want to copy that to this part, and this part is going to default to this app here. So in your Docker container, you're going to have a part called app, and in there you want to copy package.json and put it in here, right? And then you want to run yarn install. Yarn install is going to install everything in your package.json, right? It's going to go ahead and pull it down. Then you want to go ahead and uh, copy copy dot dot. So you want to copy this and put here, right? So what the way this I don't how do I explain this? You I just lost how to explain it, but you basically want to copy like let me say, the rest of your code from this place here. So you want to copy the rest of your code and you want to go ahead and put it in here, right? So when you've run your stuff, you want to copy the rest of your code and put it here, and you want to go ahead and run yarn build, right? And all that stuff. Very fancy. And you have the basic Nest CLI JSON. This is for NestJs. So NestJs generates this for you, and this is where NestJs keeps tracking of things, all those beautiful things. And you have package.json, which you've just explained. Here you have your dependencies. You have your name, your version. If you want to upgrade, if you want to have version tracking, the auto private. If this repository is private, if this is private or whatever, you know this is set to true. I don't know why it's set to true. So you have your scripts. These are the scripts that are generated out of the box for you. So NestJS is configured to run enterprise code. And if you want to do this in Node.js, you have to do this manually. Like you have to specify almost every command here. But NestJS generates this for you. There's a build, there's a format. If you run yarn format right now, it's going to go ahead and format this file for you and make sure that everything formats. So let's see if we can do that. Uh-huh. Yarn formats. And that goes ahead of format everything. And this is because this file is already formatted, right? And you have your stats dev. This starts your file in developer in debug or developer mode. So it keeps watching it, right? It uses this watch here, and that way, normally when you're running Node.js, right? When you run Node file, after that instance, like when you update your code, that doesn't update live, but watch would allow you handle that, right? You have your debug, your prod, if you want to run this for prod, and so on and so forth. So you can see that this was generated, like we said. So when you go live, when you build your file, it's going to compile everything into this folder, right? And this folder is where your JavaScript happens, right? So remember, TypeScript is a superset to JavaScript. TypeScript is not really I wouldn't say it's a language kind of, it's a superset to JavaScript. So you have to, in the end, compile to JavaScript to run things here. So you can see that this thing is compiled to JavaScript here. And when you run this node prod or start prod, it's going to go ahead and run the files in your disk, and it's going to access the main. This is your main, which is transpiled to ES5 or something, or all those things, right? And that is just basically it. You have your TS config, which is just your basic configuration. And yeah, so let's go to the main, the elephant in the room, which is the source folder. So Kelechi has explained this to you, right? So let's see what this is. Like, let's just use the modular architecture, right? So NestJS heavily relies on modules, right? It separates things in modules, and this is a big thing for NestJS, right? In here we have our main, which is just having this here. I modify this a bit. So if you run this, you're going to see 3000 here. But because I'm using an env, because I'm using my environment configurations, I had to call the process.env, right? And even this is not the best case scenario or best practice, right? So for the most part, you want to write to a file or call this from a file, then call it from more of a JavaScript file. But we are going to have this out there, and this I think there's no issue having this like this for a production ready application. But best practice implies that you have this written to a configuration. So what I'll do is more of have I could have something called config.ts, right? There I could call this port to be process.env something. Then I can import this config here. So I could say const port equals, I could say process.env process.env dot, then I could say port, right? And now I need to export this. So I can have this here. So that way this is initialized. So since this is a TypeScript, right? What if this is empty, right? So here I could specify that if there's nothing here, go ahead and use 3000 here, which is what I'll just which is very nice. And that way your code is guaranteed to run. But that's, by the way, I'm going to delete this. So we have this, we have this Nest Factory. So if you, as a software person, you have used a code or you've used the factory pattern, the design pattern, factory pattern, right? So what the design factory design pattern does is it's like a factory in real life. It goes ahead to create this. It's where you manufacture things, right? You go ahead to create all these beautiful things, and the design pattern is like, I don't care how this is created. Whenever I call you and pass in some configuration, go ahead and create an instance for me. So that's what this does here. So when we say this is a bootstrap or this is a function, regular function, right? And we are calling this asynchronously because we want to do an awaited call here, and this takes time, of course. So you want to have an instance of a server, right? You want to spin up a server, and what you do is you use the NestJs factory, and you say nest factory dot create. So there's a create method here, and if you navigate to this and try to look at the code here, you'll see that this is actually doing exactly that, right? This goes ahead to creates there's a lot of things done under the hood uh, that creates this server instance for you and gives you this listener. So when you have that created, you can call a listing method on it and pass in the ports, which port you want to be subscribed to or port you want to listen to. So it's going to create these events and it's going to listen for this port. So whenever something happens in this port, Nest.js or your software is going to react, right? And since you're calling this, you have to go ahead and execute it here. So this is a function declaration, and you have to go ahead and call that function here, right? So this is basically your uh, index.js or index.ts in your regular Node.js application. And Nest.js, this by default, Nest.js is structured in this format, right? So you have your services, you have your modules, you have your controllers, right? Your services are equivalent to providers, if I'm not getting that wrong. So your services are like Nest.js is telling you that, well, we want to have modularity. We want to assist you have modularity. So you should have modularity. Anyone coming into your code base should have your code base should have this separation of concern. So everything that has to do with your business logic goes into your services here, right? So this is where you write all those crazy things that if user equals or left, make him right and stuff like that. This is where you write it. Your controller should just be in charge of routing, right? Nothing more. Just be in charge of routing. I don't care about every other thing happening. Just go ahead and route for me. And you can see that we have a basic configuration here. We have this decorator, which is a get decorator. And decorators are basically piece of code that imports this metadata to your code, right? So this is a get decorator. If you inspect it, you're going to see all what it implements, and stuff like that. So when you use this decorator at get decorator, this is equivalent to using the uh, get method in your regular Node.js application. So here you're using this decorator, you have this function call, and you're specifying, because this is TypeScript, right? You're specifying that, well, this is going to return a string, right? And you go ahead and execute this. And yes, it does, right? So in this our service, this goes ahead to execute our service. So uh, this is one other reason to having NestJS, right? Uh, Regularly in your application, different people have different ways to handle softwares and stuff like that. But by default, what I'll do is I'll just go ahead and return a string here, right? But that is not best case practice or best way to write code, right? So I could go ahead and return hello here. But that is not the best case scenario. So NestJS still wants you to have that separation of concern. And NestJS is telling you that these are the things you should have in your code. So this just goes ahead to call this service here, and you can see that the way I implement, or this service is implemented here, this service is being injected here. So this is the dependency injection Kelechi Oliver spoke to you about. So what you do is here, what we are doing here is in our constructor, we are going ahead to call this private, and we are saying this is a private method. So so since we define this as a private method, it means that you can call this outside this module, like this module, this file here. If I go ahead and call this app service some other place, it's not going to respond, right? It's going to behave as if it is not there, right? So this is a private method, and we are mapping it to this service here. And this service is the one we actually visited here, which is just returning a hello world here. So you have your controllers for your routing. Awesome. You have your controllers for your routing. Your controllers call your services, right? And your services return whatever is necessary in there, right? So your service is returning hello world. Now you ask yourself, how is my main.ts here getting access to this? Because there's no connection currently. If I go to my app modules here, you can see currently there's no connection. There's no way to get hold of this service. Like there's no way to grab hold of this instance here and manage that. Well, Nest.js uses modules, right? So in our module, these are app module, right? So in our modules are where, like, you have to specify more of how you, or I would say modules are basically where you specify the necessary things for your code to be exposed or run, right? So here we have some imports. Here I just have one import, right? And this is a Mongoose module because I'm going to be using MongoDB today. And I'm saying for roots, I'm calling Mongoose, and I'm passing this Mongoose endpoint here to instantiate MongoDB. Now we are specifying that for our controllers, right? This is my controller here. So I'm telling NestJS that, well, all my routing is going to happen in my app controller here, and my services are going to happen in here, right? So you can see that services are equivalent to providers, right? So it's going to happen in here. So that way, NestJS is aware of this. And this is what happens when you create any other file. So if I go here and if I create a food recipe or create a food module, I want to create a module called food, I have to follow this process of everything must have a module, it should have a service, and it should have a controller. If not, Next.js is going to crash. It's going to tell you, well, you're doing this probably your way, but your way is not the standard, right? We have a standard, and you have to follow it. And this is one big thing about, you know, this is one big thing about, say, this is one big thing libraries don't have, but frameworks do have. And this is one reason, anyways, I don't love writing frameworks out of the box, right? So some frameworks are cool, like NestJS is very awesome. I've used NestJS before, and I still use it. But some other frameworks give you this tight way of following things, and out of the box, I want to be very flexible. I want to crash things. I want to break things, and that is why outside enterprise softwares, I would, for the most part, when I want to learn something, for the most part, I usually follow writing the raw code and stuff like that. Because then, if you do anything the wrong way, NestJS is not going to allow you, right? So let's go ahead and test this and see this code if we actually can run it. I know I did not explain this test. This is just a basic test, and we will not be treating tests today. So this is your basic test. You can see your test file here for the app controller, and I think that is it. So let's go ahead and run this. For you, you can go ahead and run yarn start colon dev as stipulated in here in the package.json. So here we have this start here. So if you can run this yarn start colon dev, and it's going to watch it for you. For me, I want to, because I have a Docker Compose file, and also every other person following me who has imported this code. So because I have a Docker Compose file, and you can see here, I have a command that runs npm run start dev here, right? So which is, so when I run Docker Compose, awesome. So okay, I don't have Docker running. So for Mac, you have to have Docker desktop running, which is very uh, awesome. So I'm going to start Docker. Awesome. This is very crazy. So we start Docker desktop to have that running, and it's going to take almost forever to start. And Docker desktop is running. So for Mac requires you to have Docker desktop running to run Docker. For Linux, you don't have to. You could have Docker running in the background, and for Windows, I don't think you have to. So I could go ahead and say Docker Compose up, and this is going to go ahead and start that software for me or application. And let's test this, right? So if I go to localhost port 3000, let's see, localhost port 3000, awesome. You can see hello world. Awesome. Yay, we wrote our first NestJS application. So yeah, I mean, like, that was a tough one. So we want to proceed to creating our food recipe uh, software. And so some of the if you're not following up, if you're not following by pulling the code on GitHub, we need to install a few things. So one of the things we need to install is my hold on. Okay, this was what I wanted. So I'm going to kill this for the now and clear it. So we need to install mongoose, right? So you could say yarn install mongoose. We also need to install Nest Mongoose, because Nest.js wants to be the middleman in handling a lot of things for you. So Nest is like, we have a best practice. Don't worry about it, right? Just go ahead and use your tool, whatever tool we support. We would abstract it for you and make best case scenario for you. So we need to install Nest Mongoose. So that's at Nest.js Mongoose. I don't know if you're noticing it, but I'm typing like a snail today. Then we need class validator uh, for our validation, and we also need
Is it possible you
our
zoom in a
class
bit?
infrastructure. Sorry.
Hey, Melody, is it possible to zoom in a bit? We're unable to see your terminal.
Oh, awesome. I am
Can you
sorry
zoom?
about that. How about now?
Okay. Better now.
Oh,
Yeah, this is
sorry
better.
about that. I usually shrink my terminals to this size, because I have this giant screen, so I have to, fit a lot of things in it. But yeah, you can go ahead and run this, and it will install that for you. I have already have this installed beforehand, so I don't have to battle with my service provider. So you can go ahead and run this, and it will install that for you. And we want to start. So first of all, the way we plan this is we want to have a food uh, module, and we want to have a recipe module. So every food is going to have several recipes. So there's going to be, I guess, more of a one to many relationship. So
Really?
yeah, is it possible to have uh, several recipe for, like, can I have the same recipe for making, let's say, hamburger, uh, for another food, like, pizza or something? Well, I don't know. I just don't know.
You want to
I
make
feel,
hamburger pizza?
sorry.
You want to make hamburger pizza?
So
I think
there's
let's
gonna
keep
be,
one to many relationships. So one food can have many recipes, right? Maybe
yeah,
you
one food
might
should
want
have
might
many
choose to add
recipes.
more water, or might choose to add some ingredients or something.
Yeah, but recipes should only belong to one food, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, awesome. So there's gonna be a one to many relationship. I I almost blew up there. So we could go ahead and create this manually by going to our section here, right? So I'm gonna close this for some good reasons. We could go ahead and create a file called food, and we have to go ahead and add all the stuffs here. We have to go ahead and add food controller, food module, food service, and stuff like that. I'm a lazy developer, right? I am very lazy. And NestJS knows there are a lot of lazy developers using its platform, right? So let's use a Nest resource, right? So if you have the CLI installed, we could use one of the Nest resource to generate this for us. So we are going to do that now. So if you type Nest G resource, right? And they literally called it resource. So that's very awesome. So if you say Nest G resource, that is going to prompt an interface that asks you, what name would you want to use? I want to use food, so I'm going to write food, and it's going to ask me, do I want to use REST API or whatever? This is, I think there's Next.js may be underestimated. Like, you could literally spin up microservices in minutes in Nest. I've done several microservices literally in minutes, and they are enterprise standard. Like, you have a you could connect your message broker. You don't have to write all this crazy code, and everything is working for you. If you go there, you see there's Kafka, there's RabbitMQ, and there's ton of them, right? So Next.js knows that, well, you could have several applications you want to write. So do you want to use GraphQL? Do you want to use microservices, or we want to make this a WebSocket? I'm going to go with REST because this is a REST application. So, and it's going to ask me, do you want to generate the entry CRUD? And I will say yes because I am lazy. And done. That is generated. So you can see here we have a controller generated, which is the controller, the test file. We have the controller, the actual controller, the module. Remember, each this is module based, or this is module oriented architecture. If and everything is structured in modules, right? So you must have a default module where you have all your imports, so your services or everything. So because Next.js is allowing you to build softwares that can go to become microservices, right? So your modules can be seen as a service, right? And they should have their own capacity to handle themselves. Like, every module should handle itself, right? You can have a module that handles itself, and in shared code you can have shared code as well and stuff like that. So here you're going to have to import all those things, and we have our food service spec, which is our test file and stuff like that. So let's go to the code and see what was generated for us. You see, we have the same food, and funny enough, we have this thing called DTO. What does that mean? Uh, DTO is a data transfer object, right? So I'm going to explain that in a sec. But yeah, you have this thing called DTO. You have this thing called entity, which is your entity. and you have your test. This is a test file. You know what? I'm just going to go ahead and delete some things I don't need, right? So for instance, I don't need this app controller, right?
You can
Let me.
just leave endpoint in the out app controller as like a health check endpoint that's like coming to the base routes that is returning that through the server is running. But you can then delete the
Okay.
spec files and the test files, the spec
All right.
files,
Awesome.
not the test files.
So I'm going to delete the spec file here because we are not doing test today, and I think that is it. And we have this spec
Yeah,
here.
also inside.
So let's just delete that and do some cleanup. Awesome. So we have our DTO, we have our entity. So your entities will be uh, where you handle your models, your database models, right? So you want to have some connection to your database. This is where you do it. You could do your in-memory here. NestJs doesn't care, but as long as you're modularizing your code, that's what matters. And yeah, so let's look at the code generated. So you can see here, it equally says it updated the app module, which is very nice of NestJs to do, right? So if you come to the app module here, which is the base module, NestJs went ahead and added this food module here. And that is beautiful, right? That is very beautiful. And this wasn't here initially. So that way we can have access to our food modules, right? In when we go to this listener here, uh, you know, uh, when we go to our main here, which is this port 3000 here, and call it, we can have access to food module, which was just created for us. So let's go to this here, uh, first of here, right? This module here. Here we're already importing the food controller. We are having our food service, which is very great. And over here, the services, we have basic service. So we have basic service like this action is this the create method. We have the find all, we have the find one, we have the updates, we have the remove, right? And we have in our controller we have routes handling that. So we have the create routes, which is a post method, right? We have the get routes, we have the get by ID, right? And we have the delete here.
And all this was automatically generated by Nest, right? By running just one
Exactly.
command.
Exactly, exactly. So I didn't do anything else, and all these were just generated. And just that we deleted the test, like even the test was just generated for us, which is very, very awesome, right? And this is,
Okay.
this is basically, this is what, this is the function of ESLint, right? So if I go ahead and save this, I have auto format, and it formats it for me. So yeah, next is cool. So let's look at how to, uh, you know, handle this code. So we are going to be using MongoDB. So in our entity file, we are going to have our Mongo instantiation and all those things, right? We are going to have Mongo schema and all those fancy things. And uh, our entity, you can see it as your model or your database model where you have your database structure. Since we are going to be using, in cases of ORM, so you have your structure and you can manage all that in your entity file. So here we are going to start implementing this uh, food entity, right? So I am going to, import a few things. So I want to import from MongoDB a few things. So I want to import prop types uh, for this file. So I could use decorators, right? Because Nest.js heavily supports decorators, and decorators are just like help inject metadata to your projects, right? So you have this metadata injected, and you don't have to write fancy things and stuff like that. So I will go ahead and import do some tree shaking there. I'm going to import prop, and I want to import schema so I can have instance to the schema. and I would import also the schema factory, which is a builder factory. Awesome. Okay, I was expecting. I was actually typing and expecting autocomplete, but I forgot that I haven't written out the
Yeah,
import here.
yeah, I do that a lot. So most times when I want to import from a particular package, I'll first of all open the curly braces, equate it to the package I want to import, and then start adding my imports, and automatically I get autocomplete.
Yeah, so I didn't do that, and I was hoping to get autocomplete. So that was why I was typing. I
Yeah.
was looking, and I was like, "Why is this not happening for me? Am I doing something wrong?" It's very funny. So here we want to create our so let's go ahead and have this class. Let's create a type class, right? So we want to go ahead and have uh so our food is going to have a name and I guess a description as a basics, right? I don't know what else a food should have.
Yeah, an ID, a name, a description.
All right,
Right.
awesome. So we're gonna have a name, an ID, and a description. So I'm gonna say ID,
I think
which
Mongoose
is
automatically adds ID with the
yes.
underscore.
So yeah, I don't need to do that. So I'm going to have a name. This name is going to be a strange, right? And we want to have a description, and this description would be a strange as well.
And I
Now,
want to have pointers to other food, right? Sorry, to the recipes for that food, right? Like an array
yes,
holding the recipes to the other food.
yeah. So we are going to handle that many one to many relationship when we get to recipe parts. But I just want us
Okay.
to kind of build out the food and see
Okay,
that
that
way.
works.
Yeah.
That works.
So we can have start using our props. So we have these props, and these props we want to specify this to be a required field. So you can see that we are specifying this to be a required field, and this is next level validation, right? So in your schemas, in your database schemas, you're specifying fields that must be required and not, right? And we equally have, in our controllers, we are equally doing the same thing, and all that is like next level security. So this is required. Required is true. Want to do the same for this. Our required here is going to be true, right? So we have this now. So we want to use decorator to like by default we want to have instance to created at we want to have instance to updated at. So one way we could do that is this use this schema factory. So this schema here to have instance to that. So we have a schema, a decorators schema, which is a decorator, and in there we want to inject this that timestamp, and our timestamps are going to be we'll have a created we'll have a created at, and that is going to be called created, right? We want to have our updated at, and that is going to be called updated. We can save this. So far so good. We are doing good. And now we want to create this, because we have this schema factory here, so we don't have to suffer ourselves to how MongoDB or NestJS creates this Mongoose instance and stuff like that. We just call the factory and hope that Nest knows how to handle it, right? So we can go ahead and export const a food schema.
So this is the factory is creating the actual schema itself, right?
Yes, exactly, right? So and this is just done out of the box for you.
Okay.
So we have our food schema, and we can use this schema factory we imported here. So schema factory dot create, now create for class, and that is going to create our class, and we want to pass in this class here we created. So with this class we wrote here with all our validation and everything, or all our requirements. And just like that, you've created your instance, your class, or
Your
your
schema.
schema, your food schema, and that is done for you. So There's no big code, writing code, trying to figure out how to call, how to spin up Mongols and stuff like that. And all that is done for you under the hood. All you have to do is use provided methods and you're good. So, are we getting any questions from the stream?
No, no questions yet.
All right, awesome. So, let's want to go to our DTO. So, our DTOs are basically data transfer objects, right? So, when you write a service in your controller, right? You have, where is our controller? Awesome. Okay, so in your controller, this is basically a a logic that can be transferred, right? Like these are objects that can be transferred to this service here. So you could have your, okay, you can see here we have our food create food detail here. This is basically something that should I say an instance that is being transferred for you. So over the network, you have this object you want to specify. Let's for instance, we want to create a food. We have to provide a name, and we have to provide a description. So our DTO is basically just that: the name, the description, right? And now we want to provide validation for it. So this DTO file here allows us to do just that, right? So we are going to create validations for that. So if our user is in place of strange, if our user is imputing something like, say for instance, an ID as a number or a name as a number, we want to, we don't want to run that code. We don't want that user to do that, right? So we don't want that code to get to our entity and start crashing our Mongo instance and stuff like that. That would be
I
bad code,
experienced
right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I experienced something just with DTOs. Like, so that's one of the benefits with Node.js. NestJs brings out of the box. So with DTO, you can do validations. You can also do filtering or data transformation. So I've
Yeah.
seen cases where people write server applications and they expect a payload that contains some kind of, let's say, a name and a phone number. But now the person making use of the API sends a name, a phone number, and a date of birth. Do you know that if the person doesn't do some filtering, then just passes that object, that input object, thinking it's correct, passes it to the model, end up creating excess or making excess updates, right? That wasn't required by the API. So with DTOs, you can add transformation, you can add validation and all that. So it's kind of a very important concept when it comes to Next.js.
Exactly, exactly. Like, so it's really, really helps, right? So we
Yeah.
have to go ahead and create our name. DTO, this should be a strange, and we are going to create our description. And I believe without DTOs as well, it's easy to kind of crash your database or kind of inject fields that, let's say for instance, you're using a field called author or something like that, and this is not supposed to be provided by user or something,
Yeah,
and
yeah, that's
because the user is passing that and you're accepting the wrong
override.
input, stuff like that, they could override your entire database, crash it, or do some manipulation and probably hack your system as well. So description is going to be a strange, which is awesome. Now we want to kind of you know add some validation to this. So from our class validation, so we have our DTO to be a name must always be a strange. So anything that is not in this DTO is going to be filtered out, right? We are only accepting things in this DTO, right? So if you are sending if you go ahead and send something like say I don't know my I lack ideas in life. I just don't know. But say for instance we send something like let's say age to this food, it's going to be filtered out, right? So, and that is pretty awesome. So let's import a few things from class validator. So uh, import is from class validator, and we want to import one. We don't want our name to be empty, so we are going to import is not empty, right? We also don't want uh, this not to be a string. So this must always be a string, even though we are specifying it here. So we want to import is strange, right? We also want to give someone could provide a name of 50 million characters, and then we have an issue, right? So we want to provide a max length, right? So we'd say max length, and we want to equally provide a min length. So there should be a minimum length and there should be a maximum length. So I don't want a name to be I, like the letter I. That would be crazy, right? So min length. So here we go ahead and use that. And these are all decorators. So they have implemented them all under the hood for us. So we just have to use them. It's not empty, shouldn't be. And uh it's strange. This should be a strange. And max length. So here max length we have to provide, you know, something. So max length is going to be, I think the max length should be uh 30. So if your name is longer than 30 characters, then or if the food name is longer than 30 characters, then I think you should change that food. And we are going to make a min length. Minimum length for your food should be 2, right? So we have some food that are, I think, 2 or 3 characters long. And we go ahead and do the same thing for this. So for description, we just have to change the min length of the description to be 10, and this should be 300. So we've implemented this create food detail, right? So let's go down to uh, let's say uh, now let's go down to
The controller.
the controller. But before we go down to the controller, I want to add a guard, right? Because right now we are not validating that like we are not using this. We need to use a pipe, right? So let me just do this and explain and explain it later. So I want to go to
Okay.
this app modules here, or this let's say, is that the app modules? No, here, right? Okay. So I want to go here and use a global pipe, right? So, and I want to be able to whitelist, for my validation pipes, right? I want to be able to whitelist it. So that way, things that are not in this validation are going to be filtered out, right? So
Yeah, that's the
currently,
transform.
yeah. So we
Okay.
want to go ahead and use the do this say app dot use use global pipe, right? Okay, yeah. I want to go ahead and call here new, want to go new
Right.
validation pipe, right? Yeah, and that imports automatically from next common.
You know,
And we want
did
to
you?
go ahead,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah, continue.
and want to whitelist and say this whitelist is true. So now what happens is that for my DTO, the validations are provided in here in this class validation are always going to be, like NestJs is going to use this. So if you have something that is not in here, NestJs is going to whitelist it. Is going to blacklist it. So only these variables, description and name, are going to be whitelisted. So if I send something through, or if I make an API call, and we'll test this out real soon when we are doing a postman call. So if I make a create endpoints in my here, that's my controller. Okay, this is the controller. In here, if I send an API call, I send name, food, name, description, and say age here, and try to console.log here, you would see that there is no age, right? So all I have is name and, you know, name and description, and that's why we have to do that. So moving forward, we have this code. So this is already implementing this, and this is calling this already. So here is where we have to do our work. So we have to go to the service and do an actual work in the services. Also, I just forgot we are injecting that. So for our food service, we don't want to return a string here. We want to actually do something with this, right? So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. So for our crates, I'm going to go ahead and delete this. And so here I want to, okay, this is our service. Awesome. So
So yeah.
yeah, go
So
ahead.
on the service, I think we'll be creating the actual food. We'll be calling the Mongo schema, injecting Mongos to the through the constructor, and then calling the create method to create the food, right?
Yeah, definitely. So sorry, I went kind of so definitely want to call the
So we want to
mongoose.
add the constructor inside the food service, the constructor, and then inject the model inside through the schema.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, awesome. So let's do that. So let's call a constructor, and here we want to inject this MongoDB, this instance here we've created, right? Where is it?
Inside the entity.
Yeah.
Inside the entity.
Sorry, I am trying
Entity.
to look. Okay, inside the entity here. So we want to go ahead and inject this just the same way we've been doing this. And here we already have this injectable here. So one of the ways you do dependency injection, if you go to the NestJs applications, I'm trying to move my cursor and I think it's stuck. So I have to do this all the time. So if you go to the NestJs documentation and look at, oh, it's not part of the, I think it's not part of the things here, but you could use the decorator at inject, right? And that is going to inject the whole, is going to allow you to inject that. So let's go ahead and inject this. Uh, okay, injectable. So we want to go ahead and inject, want to go ahead and inject this food service, right? Call it food. I think I lost the way to handle this by
Okay,
from the
so
NestJS
yeah,
documentation.
so the way to do it is we just use at inject model. So Nest.js has already done some thing under the hood with Mongoose. So you just use the at inject model, import it from Nest.js/Mongoose.
Okay, at inject model. Let's go there.
Yeah, yeah. So
Awesome.
we now use so we now use the name, the cat's dot name. So you import the schema, the cat. Sorry, we use the food dot name, right? So you import food, which
The food schema.
the model we created earlier. Then yeah, the food schema, you import it and then you call the name metadata of the class.
Okay.
No, the
So
food
we have
itself, the food class. You
oh, the
also need the
food
schema,
class
but just
itself.
keep it, import the food class.
Awesome. Awesome. So the food class we created here.
Yeah, the food class itself.
This one here. Awesome.
Yeah.
So we can
So
implement
it's
on that.
already
Oh, crazy. So
yeah,
we have
so just
to
call remove it there. No, the food inside the quote in inject
sorry.
model, you can just remove it.
call this. We are
You can
injecting
just remove
this.
it here since it's still the same class. So just food dot name.
Also,
You've not
okay,
imported it. Dot name. Yeah, import it above. Yeah.
so I think we've imported this here. So
Then you can then put your private after the no comma, just private.
sorry, private
Private. And then put in
the
food
food,
model,
yeah,
small
which is
f
going to
food
implement
model.
the food schema.
No, yeah, no need for the quotes. Yeah, food model. And then you put in model. So you put you
Yeah, I
extend
think
the model interface.
so. Once we import this food model and we want to put in the food,
Yeah, so we
sorry,
need to extend the model interface. So you need to import model from Mongoose.
oh, the mongoose model. Oh,
Yeah,
that's
Mongoose model
awesome.
interface.
Hold on. I think I lost my mind here. My mind is completely blanked here. So so this is crazy. So let me just look at the NestJS documentation on how to
So
do
okay,
this.
I will just drop a link to the documentation for you right now.
Please, I don't know why my system is okay.
So I added it to the chat.
Also,
Have you seen it?
no, I haven't.
The chat here on StreamYard.
Nope, I haven't.
Um,
You're sure you added to the chat?
yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
just you can go ahead and pronounce it for me, and I'll just grab that.
Okay, so you want me to mention what to type?
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, go over to the food service. Back to the food service.
Okay. Yo, mention the link, NestJS documentation.
Okay, let's just open the documentation. On the right, click on techniques and scroll down to where you have Mongo.
All right, all right,
On the right, on the left rather, click on techniques, then Mongo's.
okay,
Yeah, so
so we have this
scroll
model.
down to where you have the
Yep. Okay, so this is it. Okay, so we have to implement this private, then we have to call this model.
yeah.
And awesome. So let's do just that. So I'm going to copy this for reference and not disgrace my family, and have this here.
Yeah.
So I'm going to call this to be the food,
Yeah, the food.
and this is the
And
model
extend,
from,
yeah, import the model
um,
from Mongo.
and we are going to
And then
call this to be
food.
the food. So this is basically being injected now. So we can start calling this MongoDB, uh, and this is not cat model. This is a food
This is
model.
food model.
So we can start calling this. So outside dependency injection, the way you handle this is you have to create a new instance, right? So you have to do. You've seen code where you wrote something
Yeah.
like new. You had to use a new keyword. That is you creating a new instance, and that is very messy. So because then you don't have one unified instance. There are cases where you need to have distributive you have to have different instances. But for this case, you need one instance, all right? And this dependency injection helps you have this idea of singleton, right? So you have one instance and everything is just using that. So you don't have to keep recreating instances. So we could return for our create, we say food model dot. So I think for this MongoDB, it is create, right? And we want to
Yeah.
create whatever comes through our DTO. And we don't have to, you can see that here we don't have to do all this extra validation and thing, because we already are doing it some other place here. So in regular code, the way I would do this or handle this is I'll have to start checking if this exists and if that doesn't exist and stuff like that. But since there's modularity here and all this, we are very certain that this code here, whatever is coming through here, is very, very, you know, plain, and it has been streamlined to what we want. So we can actually do
That's
this. Yeah,
yeah, that's
and we
because
have
of
that.
the class validator we had and the transform we had. We had already told NestJs to whitelist or to blacklist those items that weren't defined in the DTO.
Okay,
Yeah, so
awesome.
the
So
DTO, yep.
yeah,
So the DTO acts like a gate man to inputs that are coming in through the network, and it's filtering out what's not required by the DTO and then allowing only those things that are required and in the right form. Yep.
yeah, for sure. So we could go ahead and implement define all the necessary things as well, define all the remove and all that. So I will just go ahead and you know return this. Let's run this very fast. So we could say food model this return. Oh, this is me. This is me losing my freaking mind. This dot the food model dot find all, right? Find. Uh, we could run this find, and I think that should find it for you. And we could do the same thing for find one. This dot food model is the food model dot find one. Find by ID. So we could find this by ID and provide the ID here. So ID here, and we terminate that. We go ahead and for updates, we say this dot model. Is there find and updates?
Find by
Find
ID.
find by ID. Okay, find by ID and updates, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah,
replace. Yes, updates.
yeah.
Okay,
Find
find
one
one
by
and
ID.
updates.
Okay,
Hold on.
find and update. Yeah, you can use the find one and update. I thought that there is something like find one by ID and update.
Yeah, there
Find
is actually find
okay.
find by ID and updates.
Yeah.
So we can impute the ID here, and
You need to add the updates. Yep.
okay, hold on. Let me return this. Sorry, why are we using this again? Okay,
So
we need to
updates.
implement the. Yeah, we need to implement this DTO. Awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, but you just for now just pass it to the find by ID as a second argument. The method find by ID and update, you just passed in the ID. Yeah.
Okay, update DTO. Awesome. So this dot food model. So we have to delete, right? There's find
Find
one and
by
update.
yeah and delete.
Find by ID and remove, and we'll have to pass in this ID. And I think that's basically it, right? So we're already
Yeah.
implementing all this from. So we have the. So this is very plain here. We are not doing we're not doing validation or crazy thingy. Like we're not doing authentication thingy. So we don't have to find that username thingy. And we are just calling here find this. Go ahead and find whatever is there. Find one, find one by this ID, updates, and so on and so forth. So in our controller, we want to adjust this controller a bit. Do we need to adjust this controller? I doubt we do. We are already
Um,
implementing this.
yeah,
No, we are
everything
not.
looks.
Yeah, everything looks good here.
So you need to update up implement the updates DTO.
Sorry, where is it?
You need to
Um,
implement the update DTO. So you need to go into the DTOs folder and add the decorators to the
I
updates
think
class.
I think the
You
update
can
DTO
just
is
remote
actually
copy.
extending this. Yeah, so we don't
Oh,
need to
it's
update it.
extending it, so that's cool. That's
Yeah,
cool.
so yeah, that's very cool. So we don't need to. I think this is it. So let's go ahead and moment of truth, start our application and hope it crashes or not. So let's go. So I'm going to run Docker Compose dash Docker Compose up, and I want to. You know what? Let me build dash build. Or would this take forever? What do you think?
No,
I
let's
think
let's
building.
just let's run it like normal, like with the watch flag, so that we don't have to come here again.
You know what? I'll just go to run it. Here. So I think it's up. Hopefully. So let's go to our local host. Ah, awesome. And I ran it on, on. So let's run this without the this. Where's Docker?
Is it running?
I believe so. I'm trying to find my Docker.
I think you run it with the detached flag, so you need to like kill the old one and then start up a new one, maybe.
Definitely. So I'm killing it now from this terminal section. So I've killed it. Uh, so I am going to run it again. Awesome. So let's look at this. Okay, we have an error. Says here cannot find nest mapped types. Is it serious? So let's see.
Side update for detail.
That's not here. I think update detail. This is actually here.
Okay. So do you have to rebuild the image or something?
I think so. Probably. So let me try rebuilding it. And if this persists, I'll just go ahead and implement the detail without using the partial type. You know what? Let me just go ahead and re-implement this without using the partial type, right? So we don't have to go through this craziness of a third party package. So here I'll just copy this. Sorry, here I'll just copy this. Since it's the same thing, put here. The reason I'm doing this is so it's basically it already has that package there, and we are going to
But you
spend.
have some issues. The export there is exporting a create detail instead of update detail.
Oh, awesome. It's actually yeah, that's true, and it's exporting it update detail, and we should be good for the most part. Let's try.
You need to rerun Docker.
Yep.
No,
Nope.
I don't think it's running yet. Let's go there. What's going on?
If
Partial
model
solo.
is exported from separate module, that's I think we have something with our mongoose
Scroll up.
food
Let's
module.
see.
Oh, so what is happening here is that we are not currently uh, providing our food modules in here. So I think
Okay.
yeah.
We need to add it
So
to the module.
yeah, we need to add it to our food modules here. So uh, here we want to first off we want to import mongoose, right? Because we are using mongoose, right? So we'll go ahead and say import import. Want to import a bunch of
Mongoose
things.
module dot for picture.
Yeah, so want to go ahead and import mongoose module but for feature.
Okay.
So the for feature, where is it? Oh, so mongoose
You already
modules
have
dot.
an import below. Or is that different? A different one?
Oh, I think this is also. Oh,
You have an import from the bottom, so you might not get IntelliSense.
yeah. So mongoose module dot for feature, and this is actually a function. We want to do this. Oh, this is the problem. So
Yes.
we have
An
to,
issue.
yeah, it's killing me. I was wondering why is this giving me issues? Okay,
And
so
add
we
your
have,
semicolon
yeah,
after imports.
okay, so here.
After
Oh yeah,
imports. After imports.
yeah. After import there should be a semicolon.
Yeah, the
As you can,
imports has no semicolon now. You're opening an array block.
there is a semicolon here. There's a colon.
So yeah, the
So
imports needs a colon after the import on line 7. Line 7. After imports,
oh
after the S.
oh oh oh, now I get. Okay, this is crazy. Sorry. I was wondering why I was looking at this place here, but yeah, so now I
Yeah,
get
you
it.
need to
So
fix the
name
correct
is going to
place.
be food food dot name, right? So we are importing this from name, right?
No, there's an issue. The imports, the type, like
No, the import is
the
it's on the wrong line.
yeah. So just fix before importing any of that and fix the type issues with that part. So just you can remove everything inside the curly braces first. Yeah, just remove it. Then yeah, so everything is fixed now. You can start adding the name, which is food.name.
Okay, and we want to
Add the schema as well.
schema.
No, comma, not
Schema,
semicolon.
yeah, is an object, obviously. Schema is going to be full schema, right?
Yeah,
If
full
I
schema.
have okay, so this should be good. And here we have,
So you need to pass it an array, not an object. So inside the mongo.for future, put in an
yeah,
array block.
yeah, this should be an array. Awesome.
No, no, no. An object inside the array.
Oh yeah, yeah, definitely, definitely. So this should still be an object, but no, I want. It's very crazy how I can write. I was thinking of writing, something like this in an array. Like it's very crazy. I think because I'm in front of the screen and I have this blasting light all over my face, so it's kind of
Okay.
yeah. So let's try
Cool.
this one more time. I think our code is running, so
Okay.
let's try it one more time. Moment of truth, right? Awesome. I feel so happy. So so let's try our routing. Uh, how do we route now?
Let's get postman.
Yep. You know what? We have a get endpoint. I think so. Do we? So let's
Yeah, we
do
but we've not
slash.
created any food yet.
Yeah, let's just do if we can have an empty uh,
Array.
you
Okay.
know array. So this empty array comes up. I'm gonna spin up Postman if I have Postman installed. I doubt I do. Okay, I
You don't
don't. I I don't have Postman installed.
okay, so
This is
that,
crazy.
that's the easiest way to test it. We can use
I think there is an option
can
here.
use
Oh, that's crazy. I have Postman Web installed though, so I
you
am
can
going
use
to.
but how would you use I've not tried postman. Okay, you can use postman if you know
Yeah,
how
I
to.
think I've been writing GraphQL for a bit now, so I I didn't want to install a lot of dependencies in my computer. So I'm going to
Okay,
spin
you
up
can just,
Postman again.
okay, you can just use Postman Web.
Yep. And do this and move this to this place and grab this.
Our time is so running so fast.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. So Postman Web is up and we have a lot of collections. Great.
Is it
Okay.
possible
So
we
let,
zoom in a bit?
yeah, I can. I would in a while. So I'm going to do this and try to zoom in.
Yeah, if possible, maximize the screen so we have it like covering the window. Yeah. Zoom in more.
I think this is the highest I can zoom in. So I'm
Okay, all
going
right.
to local host slash food and call this to get endpoint just to test it. And this works. So let's do uh, post endpoints. We are doing JSON, right?
Yeah. No,
Sorry,
body section above. Body
it is
section
what
above.
awesome.
Yeah. Select
I
row
don't know
all. JSON.
application
JSON.
JSON. So
Yeah.
have a name called uh,
You have to put it inside double quotes. The keys should be in quotes.
yeah, I totally forgot that I'm not writing JavaScript no more. So we have a name called pizza and we have a description called uh, this is pizza, our first pizza. And let's test this out. So hit this and it adds it. So what's happening currently is that we are just basically returning everything that Mongo gives us. So you could go ahead and we could go ahead and streamline that and specify what to return and what not. But for the now, I think this is very okay.
Yeah, this is
And
cool. I think we've done a lot more work.
yeah, so this is one. We could go ahead and add something else. So what other food do you want to add, Kelechi?
Let's add shawarma.
Shower. I know I got it wrong. Like I got it spelling wrong.
Yeah, you
I
said it.
know.
Whatever.
I
It
think there's
still
an
works.
R. Okay, this is
Okay, and then
okay.
we
So
can
I'm
add
going
drinks,
to.
right?
So let's try and update this. So we have this to be
Okay.
okay. So we can update this to something else. So let's update our shawarma. You know what? Let's get all our food. So
Okay.
we
You
have
can
two
just
food
open
here.
a new tab so we don't have to keep going through changing the
Oh,
endpoints.
awesome.
So, yep, cool.
Okay, so we have.
You can duplicate the other one. Yeah.
How do I do that?
No,
There's no
keep your
duplicate.
cursor on the tab and then right click duplicate. That should work.
Nope,
On the
doesn't.
tab. On the tab.
Sorry, what tab are you
No.
talking about? Because right now,
Where
right
you see
now, I'm more
your
confused.
request method. Where you
In,
see your request method.
okay, there's no
Chris Middle
duplicate
is
here.
a small code for the Bucks.
Okay, you know what? I'll just do it manually because I am
Okay.
not a fan of Postman, so I'll just do it manually and have this
Okay.
to be uh put endpoint, right? So we do have a put endpoint. I think it's a patch. If I'm being,
It's supposed to be put.
I think we have a patch. So could you so what's generally the difference between a put and a patch? I think they are almost the same thing, but Yeah, could you
Yeah,
like
yeah, they are different. Um, okay, a patch updates does a partial update, right?
okay,
Hold on. Why a put does a full update of whatever entity, something like that. But they're actually different. Most times I see myself using a put rather than a patch.
awesome. I think I think uh I could be wrong, but I think what a patch does is it does either it's a patch is more of a create or updates kinda, or
Okay,
I could be
how?
wrong. Yeah, I could be wrong, but I think a patch does more of a create or update. So what happens here is, and okay, it doesn't matter anyways because so what happens is when you call, oh, okay, I think I'm wrong then. I think I'm wrong, but
So a patch
generally,
does most times. Yeah.
yeah, I think I'm wrong. So I'll just shut my mouth and continue this.
No, it
I
shouldn't.
I just saw it now and I was like, oh no.
Yeah. So you can use patch, but most times, mostly for updates, I work with put because you don't want someone. I think patch replaces the entire record and put modifies parts of the record, something like that. It's been a while.
Yeah, it has. So so we want to patch to this. We want to use this strange, and we want to update the name of it. So name here. We want to do this to. So this should be the shawarma. We want to do it to, let's say, mango, because I lack ideas, and that is being updated. Okay, says here must be longer. Okay, description. That's awesome. So we wrote bad code here, I think. So generally, we in our updates here,
We're supposed to add partial.
yeah, we are
We're
supposed
supposed
to use partial.
That's why the partial class was there. So,
Exactly, but it wasn't working. So that's crazy.
so you're currently modifying the crate. So uh, we go over to the update.
Okay, sorry, we
The
will have to
current,
go
the
back to.
current, the current file open on your text editor was the crate.
Oh yeah, the updates. So we want to partially implement this. First off, uh, could we use regular? No, we
Partial.
still want that. Yeah,
You cannot use
updates.
regular partial. So we just have to remove the it's not empty field right
Okay.
there
So this way now,
and
what
put
happens
option
is that
and put at
is there an option?
optional.
Okay,
Yeah, there is optional. It's
optional.
optional. It's optional. It's optional.
It's optional.
Yeah.
Awesome.
So we can put that in both of them.
I think this should equally be here.
So remove the is empty. Yeah.
Strange is master into so. So let's try this again. Okay, I think my palm is killing me here. Okay, we have a server error,
Okay.
and let's see what it is.
Let's see what the error is.
Yep. So ID for model food. I think we have
Okay.
not a number.
So we need to parse. Can we go back to the parameters you provided for the ID field?
Yeah, we're
So
not
you added,
passing the parameter, right?
so the IDs are not getting passed,
Yeah, definitely.
right? So
So
you
we
need
have
to
to
pass it through the make sure that the IDs are getting to the Mongo's model.
so here we have to inner first of let's change this to put, right? I don't know if that's okay.
Okay.
So here we want to use the param, we want to pass this strange and update here we
Param, is param actually a string there? I don't know. Okay, query is an object, param is a string. Okay, so just console log ID there. Let's ensure ID is coming in. So console log ID just below line 45 ID.
Okay, let's try this and see. Sorry, I was just looking at what we could be doing wrong. Okay, here we are
Okay.
casting this. Yeah,
You add a plus.
I think
The
here
ID
we
is
are. Yeah, it's a string, and we are passing it to
so can you type string is not available? No, no, the update method is taking a number. So just go and update it from the class, the service. So the update method is taking a number instead of a string.
Oh yeah, yeah. So here we have to. Sorry,
Yeah,
we
change it
set
to a
it to.
string on line 23.
Oh, awesome. Now, so I think that was the issue. We're passing this to, passing this to a number. So we
Yeah.
have to remove this
So
and
you have to do it on all of them.
this.
So the default code generated by NestJs was assuming we're going to be using something like SQL based, like
Yeah,
MySQL
generate.
uses it IDs. So
Yeah, auto-generated IDs and stuff like that
yeah,
too. So I think this we are good with this. Then we don't have to
okay.
have it.
So try the update again.
So here we have to. I changed it to pushed just to be clear. Yeah, I did. So call this. I think it's working now. And if we go ahead and call, we should have mango in one of them. We have mango here. So it's working. Awesome. Do we still have some time to do some relational thingy? So we have to do
No,
a recipe. Okay, we
we're
don't have
currently
that time.
out of, we're currently out of time. So, but I believe the rest of the code we push to GitHub, and with what we've shown so far, anybody could just pick it up and see what we've done. Right.
Yep. So definitely. So yeah, that's Nest.js in the world in general, and for me, it's very very flexible and easy. And I will reiterate this. Personally, I hate I hate, should I say, I keep forgetting the name. I keep forgetting the name. Like, we have libraries, then we have
Framework.
we have frameworks, right? Personally, I hate frameworks because they give me a defined rule to writing code. Like, for instance, I had to, look at the Nest documentation to see what Nest uses to inject. So,
Yeah.
yeah, consume the Nest.js Mongo injectable and stuff like that. So,
Yeah.
uh, but apart from that, it does a lot of. This is enterprise ready. Like, if we had written more code, we can ship this live, and we are guaranteed that our code is safe, right? It's not something you can just come click around and break. But yeah, I think that is.
Oh my God, there's a cast in there, a string cast. I saw a plus one of the controller file. So on line 30,
Yeah, here.
yeah.
So that we have to go here. We have to do strange. And generally, even though you're writing this, you still have to be careful. So yeah.
Yeah, but you could
So
see that TypeScript was warning you that look, something is wrong here. I don't understand why you're using a number and you're trying to cast it to
exactly.
uh yeah, so you just get though I think the problem we had why that thing happened was because of the type inference from the Mongoose package. Maybe it wasn't that strong or something like that. But cool.
Yeah, definitely. So generally that's it. And we are hopeful to find you next time in our streaming section next Saturday. I would love
Bye.
to we would love to talk about something very awesome, mostly Docker, because I mean Docker is a very powerful tool. But yeah, you'll get updated. So yeah, take care, guys. Uh, Kelechi, do you have something to say to them? Oh no, I think Kelechi hesitated. So bye.